Greetings, gentle observer, and welcome. I am Robert Farmer, and within this video I shall explore the current and ongoing energy crisis and what it will mean for all of us in the very near future. History tells us that past civilizations have come into being, flourished for a time, and then collapsed. The reasons for the demise of these civilizations are many and varied, ranging from drought or flood, from invasion to epidemics. But, and for whatever reason, collapse these past civilizations did. And to be clear, gentle observer, our industrial civilization is no different, and so will inevitably follow the same path as civilizations that have gone before us. Indeed, we have witnessed the birth of our modern industrial civilization, which began with the Industrial Revolution around the year 1750. We have seen our civilization prosper from that time and go from strength to strength, becoming more and more technology and above all more and more energy dependent on the way. And now we are poised for the inevitable collapse, brought about this time by the exhaustion of the world's energy resources, that is to say coal, natural gas and in particular oil. In order to understand and predict as best we might how the collapse might manifest itself, we can but look to the past and learn again what we can from the collapse of previous societies. And from these studies we can say that in the near term the crisis will at first go unnoticed, for price rises followed by localised shortages will initially be attributed to lack of personnel, supply chain and distribution problems, or even the weather. But, and to be clear, these are but excuses to hide the real problem, that of resource depletion. The world is simply running out of everything. But as shortages intensify, the truth that these shortages are caused by the all too real energy crisis will become increasingly apparent. Thousands of jobs will be lost as businesses of all kinds go bankrupt. House prices will fall to next to nothing, as the market will be flooded by homes repossessed from the newly unemployed. The stock market will crash, and high street banks will close their doors forever. Pension institutions will disappear, as will the pension funds they hold. And welfare payments will be a thing of the past. Energy supplies, that is to say gas, electricity, petrol and diesel, will probably be the first thing to be rationed as the crisis intensifies, followed by foodstuffs of all kinds. But eventually there will be no petrol, diesel or indeed food left to ration. And so inevitably there will be food riots, with food warehouses and distribution points being looted of whatever little food might still remain. And if the London riots of a few years ago are anything to go by, these buildings will then be set on fire. Armed gangs may well go from house to house, stealing whatever food and other valuables they can find, with resistance being met by violence and murder. When the city of Rome collapsed, 95% of the people who lived in the city fled into the surrounding countryside. And so we can expect people to leave urban areas and fan out into the countryside in great numbers, where they may feel a little safer and in the hope of finding food. Some may indeed find food. The vast majority, however, will not. As the police, along with law and order in general, have long since disappeared, anarchy will reign. And not thousands, but rather millions of people will die from starvation, disease, murder or suicide. As our civilization now spans the entire globe, these events will be repeated in almost every country on the planet, with the only exception being tribal communities living in remote parts of the world and never having become dependent upon fossil fuels. The Christian Bible sums up this situation very well indeed when it tells us that blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. This process, which has already begun, will not take long to run its course before we then move on to the longer term. Observers have different visions of the future, with author Richard Heinberg, for example, seeing people living in small farming communities. But I do not see this as realistic, as security would be impossible to maintain. The fact that we are no longer peasant farmers and have no farming experience whatsoever, notwithstanding. Personally, I see small bands of people, 20, perhaps 30, forming highly mobile bands of hunter-gatherers, moving from place to place, depending upon what food might be available in any particular location. As with all hunter-gatherers, our descendants will need a lot of territory, and so I envisage the population of England being reduced to no more than a few hundred, perhaps 1,000 at most. With the earth's resources now depleted, this hunter-gatherer way of life and the use of stone tools will not, indeed cannot, ever change. We have had our one and only shot at civilization, and we have failed. Resources that should have lasted our descendants for millennia, we in our throwaway society have squandered in just 200 years. The end of fossil fuels will not result in utopia, as the climate alarmists would have us believe, but rather the result will be dystopia. For the end of fossil fuels will mean mankind returning to the Stone Age, or rather a new Stone Age, from which mankind will never emerge. The collapse of our civilization and the transition from utopia to dystopia has already begun, and I look to the future with a deep sense of foreboding. I am Robert Farmer, and I thank you for watching my humble video, and I do so hope you will subscribe and press the notification